The Nintendo Switch is getting pretty old now. In fact, it's been around for over 7 years, and it looks like it might even be as much as 8 years by the time its successor comes out, which we think will take place around Easter 2025. And that'll make it the longest reigning Nintendo console of all time. So with the hype train in full effect, here's my take on the top 10 potential launch games for the Switch 2, and kicking things off with number 1, the biggest rumor to date has got to be Super Mario Odyssey 2. The most successful Nintendo launches have always come with either a Mario game or a Zelda game. And with The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom out only a year ago, and Echoes of the Past coming to the Nintendo Switch later this year, we're probably not getting anything brand new from Zelda for a little while, so the logical assumption is that a Mario 3D game is going to be a part of the launch window. When you consider the fact that Super Mario Odyssey is the best-selling 3D Mario game ever, it also stands to reason that they might continue that glory and try to go for a sequel at some point. And it makes sense to do that just at the start of a console launch. One of the reasons Super Mario Odyssey sold so well is because it came out in the first year of the Nintendo Switch's life cycle. And because the Nintendo Switch has sold well over 140 million consoles, it means there's just way more people to buy the games. And with Super Mario Odyssey being one of the best games on the Nintendo Switch, it just makes sense that it sold huge volumes. And because so many people have played the game and enjoyed it, it also makes sense to do a sequel, which is why I've got it as my number 1 launch game for the Nintendo Switch 2. However, there are a few mitigating circumstances that might make Nintendo to just go all out with a brand new 3D Mario experience. And the most important of these is the fact that Super Mario Galaxy 2 didn't sell anywhere near as well as the first Super Mario Galaxy game on the Nintendo Wii. The reality is that this is probably because the first game came out right at the beginning of the life cycle for the Wii, and the second game came out right at the end, and Nintendo probably made a mistake not saving Super Mario Galaxy 2 for the launch of the Wii U. However, that's not the case here, so it's quite likely that we will see an Odyssey sequel on the next Nintendo console. And as I said before, it also makes sense for it to be one of the launch titles, so fingers crossed this is locked in. If not, then our money's on a totally new 3D Mario game as the main launch title for the sequel to the Nintendo Switch. Either way, they're both probably going to take advantage of whatever crazy features the next console's got, and features is always a part of Nintendo's agenda to deliver something brand new that changes the face of gaming forever. We've seen it with the Wii, we've seen it with the Nintendo Switch, and the bridge between the two, which was the Wii U. So hopefully we're going to see some brand new features, whether that's some kind of screen projection or virtual reality headsets or whatever features, something to do with the console, something to do with the controllers. Nintendo's bound to be cooking something up, and whatever 3D Mario game we get next, it's bound to support that functionality in some way, shape or form. Okay, so while the first launch game contender on the list is a little bit speculative, although grounded in a fair amount of logic, the second has already been announced, and we've been waiting for something more concrete on the game for a long time, and it's Metroid Prime 4. It's been in the works for well over 5 years now, so it could be one of those games that bridges the gap between the two consoles, where it releases on the Switch and also releases on the successor console, which is what Nintendo did brilliantly with Breath of the Wild, which was the bridge between the Wii U, which didn't do so well, and the Switch, which has been astronomically successful. So the big challenge for Nintendo is to go from a successful console into another successful console, which it kind of hasn't done since the first two consoles came out. And the best way to do that is with an excellent roster of launch games and the all-important new functionality that I mentioned earlier. Metroid Prime 4 makes a lot of sense as a potential launch window game The timelines all stack up with the development phase, so the assumption is that it's going to be one of the first few games to come out on the next console. And that leads on nicely to another game that's already been confirmed, Pokemon Z and A. It's been announced, but we haven't seen any of the footage of the game itself. The trailer that came out was all just slick, kind of teaser images that we got for the game, which was a good indicator that it's going to be saved for the Switch 2 or whatever console comes next. Pokemon Legends ZA has already been confirmed for 2025, and my assumption is that that will tie in perfectly for the launch of the next console, and that it's probably going to be a dual release on the Nintendo Switch and its successor. It's already available to pre-order for the Nintendo Switch, so it totally makes sense that it's going to be a dual release. It's set in Lumio City in the Kalos region, which is kind of based on Paris, France, which ties in pretty well stylistically with the Olympic Games recently. And it continues the Pokemon Legends series following up on Arceus back in 2022. And if it continues in the same vein, then it will be a historical prequel to Pokemon X and Y, which originally came out in 2013. I'm already looking forward to some more dodge roll Pokemon action, which debuted in Pokemon Legends Arceus. So hopefully ZA turns out to be one of the launch games, and we get to play it on the next console too. The fourth game on our list is actually a bundle title, which would bring Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom to the Switch 2 in one kind of bundled option. I don't know if that's just a bit too much of a crazy thing for Nintendo to do, but it would definitely add to their sales potential. There's currently no Zelda game in the mix apart from Echoes of the Past, and that's set for the Nintendo Switch. So again, that could be another launch title that gets ported to both consoles when the next console comes out. But for my money, if you really want to maximize sales of the next console, putting Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom with updated graphics would be a huge win for Nintendo. And next up on my list of contenders for potential launch window games is Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Now, I know you're probably thinking that's a stretch too far, but hear me out because it has got potential. I know there's the big deal with Microsoft, and you might be thinking they don't want to kind of push Call of Duty games beyond where they are right now, but it totally makes sense for me to capitalize on a new potential audience. They tried it before on the Wii U with Black Ops 2, as well as Ghosts, and then Modern Warfare 3 made it over onto the Wii, so there's definitely a history of Call of Duty games on Nintendo consoles in the not too distant past, so it could be a potential resurgence for the next Nintendo console. Now there's more third-party titles coming later on in the list, but for the next one I'm going to go with another minor punt with Luigi's Mansion 4, which I think has got to be in development considering the fact that they've just done a port of Luigi's Mansion 2 HD for the Nintendo Switch, and normally when Nintendo does this kind of thing, where they reach back in history to bring back a game to remind you of a series, they're normally developing a new title in that series. We've seen it recently with Metroid games coming to the Nintendo Switch to help remind everybody of the series before they launch the brand new game Metroid Prime 4. And it was a similar story with Pikmin 3 Deluxe before we had Pikmin 4. So there's at least the potential for Luigi's Mansion 4 to be one of the launch games for the next console. And then in at number 7, I've got Assassin's Creed Shadows. Unlike Call of Duty Black Ops 6, it's the kind of game that just wouldn't work on the Nintendo Switch. But with the Switch 2 and my hope that it's going to get more processing power and capabilities, we might be able to get equivalent games coming out on the Nintendo console as well as next-gen consoles. Unlike Call of Duty games, there's a pretty good history of Assassin's Creed on Nintendo consoles if you go back to the Wii U, which had Assassin's Creed 3, which was actually a pretty impressive port. And while it wasn't anywhere enough to give the Wii U the kind of lift it needed to get the numbers up, it could help to make the next console a little bit more appealing for a wider audience. Assassin's Creed Shadows is set in 16th century Japan and takes place during a period of massive upheaval and civil unrest. So there's going to be a lot of crazy power struggles going on in the game, whether or not it can live up to the previous titles, namely Assassin's Creed Valhalla remains to be seen, but Ubisoft has got to be hoping it's one of the titles that can kind of bring back its fortunes a little bit. It's had a tough few years, so there's a lot resting on Assassin's Creed Shadows, performing really well, and putting it onto the Switch 2, or whatever the next console is going to be called, could be a huge part of building out a bigger audience for their games. Another good third-party option has got to be Sonic X Shadows Generations. This is already due to come out on the Nintendo Switch, so it should be a banker for a port over to the successor. And there's an even bigger history of Sonic games doing well on Nintendo consoles, so it's got a clear route to being one of the launch games. Sonic X Shadow Generations is actually 2 games in one, with the original Sonic Generations getting a remaster and Shadow Generations being an equivalent game set along the same timeline, telling the story from Shadow's point of view. The Duo bundle will be coming out for the Switch, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and PC, so with that kind of broad outlook, it's clearly got a big potential to be a launch title for the successor to the Nintendo Switch. It's a slightly similar story for number 9 on my list, LEGO Horizon Adventures, which is due out on the PS5, the Nintendo Switch, and Windows. So again, it seems like a logical step to put in this on the Switch too. It's kind of a headspin to see Aloy, the main character in the Horizon series, running around on Nintendo, but that is definitely what's happening. So if it's going to happen on the Nintendo Switch, then it could well happen on the successor console. It's essentially a LEGO-themed Horizon title with slightly scaled down graphics from your standard LEGO game. So it's got the capabilities to port over really easily. And if I'm being brutally honest, I don't think it's got as much of an audience as previous LEGO titles. So it might want to boost out its audience and make the port happen when the next console launches, fingers crossed, in 2025. And in at number 10 for my list of Switch 2 launch game contenders is a sequel to Animal Crossing's New Horizons. You may not know this, but Animal Crossing New Horizons is the second best-selling game on the Nintendo Switch. So a launch game sequel could be a big way for Nintendo to tap into the previous success and help to build out a convincing package for the next console. I'm going to put together a video on the things that I'd like to see in the next Animal Crossing game, and I'll link that above as soon as it's live, but hopefully they take the core principles of the social sim and just build it out with way more creativity and flexibility and new tools and things you can do in the game that just take it way beyond what it's currently capable of doing, which is already a lot. So I think this has got a lot of potential to add to the success of the next console, whether it ends up being a launch game or it's a little bit later on. It's one that I'm massively looking forward to, and I'm hoping to see it take the series to the next level. It's probably the biggest punt on my list outside of things like Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Assassin's Creed Shadows, but one thing's for sure, there's undoubtedly going to be an Animal Crossing sequel with the success of the last game, and I'm expecting it to be early on in the life cycle of the next console. So that's my core list done, but there are a few other titles that are worth mentioning as potentials, especially in the first year to kick things off with a bang. Mario Kart 9 would be huge. I don't think it's going to be one of the launch games, but it should be within the first year, and it's a similar story for a sequel to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, both of which have sold amazingly on the Nintendo Switch, so putting them out on the next console early on is going to be a huge part of its success. And then in addition to that, there are other games that are just available on all consoles, and we're kind of expecting these to be contenders for the launch period, if not the very beginning, then towards the end of the first year. Minecraft, Fortnite, No Man's Sky, all of these should be coming to the next Nintendo console at some point early on in its life cycle. They're massive franchises, and not being on the next big Nintendo console would be a bit of a missed opportunity, so I'm expecting them on there at some point in the not too distant future. So what do you think? What games do you think are going to be coming in the launch window? Do you think there's some extra ones that I haven't mentioned? Drop them in the comments. I want to hear what your thoughts are. You can also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already with the link on the left hand side, and see more of my videos with the links on the right hand side. Don't forget to drop a like if you like the video, and I will catch you next time.